Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of moral lessons from the Quran. Today we will be studying another passage from the Quran. In fact, this passage also consists of a single verse. This is verse 35 of Surah Ahzab, the 33rd Surah. I'm just going to share my screen with you and just going to read out the text and translation, and then we'll have a short explanation of these verses. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Innal Muslimina wal Muslimati wal Mu'minina wal Mu'minat wal Qanitina wal Qanitat was Sadiqina was Sadiqat was Sabirina was Sabirat wal Khashi'ina wal Khashi'at wal Mutasaddiqina wal Mutasaddiqat was Saimina was Saimat wal Hafizina furujahum wal Hafizat والذاكرين الله كثيرا والذاكرات أعد الله لهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. Obedient men and obedient women, believing men and believing women, dutiful men and dutiful women, righteous men and righteous women, steadfast men and steadfast women, humble men and humble women, humble men and humble women, charitable men and charitable women, fasting men and fasting women, chaste men and chaste women, men and women who remember God in abundance. For them, God has prepared forgiveness and a great reward. Now, this Surah Ahzab, which is a surah in which we know that the hypocrites have been taken to task, and they were the ones who had actually started to spread this vicious propaganda against the household of the Prophet and the noble wives of the Prophet, and they wanted to besmear their personal lives in order to bring the house of the Prophet into disrepute. Amongst these details that we find in Surah Ahzab, also mentioned is the fact that contrary to these hypocrites and contrary to these people who have launched this campaign, there are on the contrary men and women in the ranks of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam who have such outstanding traits as the one which are mentioned in this verse. And this is a verse in which you can see that both the genders are separately pointed out. In general, whenever we find moral verses in the Quran, they do not make this distinction between gender, and whatever reminder that the Quran needs to sound to us regarding morality is sounded without any distinction between gender. But here, in order to highlight the fact that how important it is that in contrast to the hypocrites and of course hypocrite men and women have been separately mentioned as well. So men and women from amongst Muslims have been highlighted, and they are actually informed that look, what is the character of these people, how they have professed faith in the last prophet, how they have professed faith in God, and how their sterling character actually speaks for themselves. Therefore, some of the qualities that you can see clearly which are mentioned, they require very little explanation. But then again, keeping in the context, the first thing which is mentioned is innal muslimina wal muslimat. Remember, these are the qualities which are mentioned, and once these qualities end, the answer or the response to these qualities is what is mentioned in the very last clause, which says a'addallahu lahum maghfiratan wa ajran azima, that for them God has prepared forgiveness and a great reward. So basically, after outlining Muslims who have these qualities, it is said that for such people is forgiveness and great reward. And therefore, as we know, that the hypocrites who were doing their last-ditch effort to besmear the lives of the Prophet and of course his wives, they are told that you can see in the mirror the character of these noble individuals. The first quality mentioned is innal muslimina wal muslimat, which of course means they are those who submit to God, whether they are men or women. So obedient men and obedient women. Now this is something which is self-explanatory, but as you can see, that obedience to God is something which comes without any conditionality. Islam itself means submission and obedience, So the first quality which is mentioned is that these are men and women who submit to God. They, of course, submit to the dictates of God. They think that even if something is not able to, I mean, they're not able to understand certain things. There are instances that at times we are not able to understand certain parts of the Quran, but after trying to make sense of these parts, if there remains something that we are not able to understand, we submit the matter to God and think that, well, okay, one day we might be able to understand. And because of the fact that these are divine words and these are God sent, so therefore they have to make sense, and they must be making sense if I'm not being able to understand them. So submitting to God is not an easy task at all, especially when it involves that we lose our own interest at times. I mean, it goes against our own interest. And at times what happens is that this submission is something which might even be extremely costly. And so in the times of Prophet Muhammad, we know that people who professed faith in Islam, they were put to a lot of persecution. They were persecuted in the name of religion, and just by saying the fact that they submit to a new religion, and that was all that needed to be done. And then came a whole storm of punishments and torments which they would be afflicted with by the disbelievers. So in al-Muslimina wal-Muslimat makes a lot of sense when you read these verses in the light of the background that was there at the time of the revelation of the Quran, that these were the people who, when they saw that God's messenger is standing right in front of them and calling them to the truth, so they immediately submitted to him. And we know that precisely for this reason, that because Abu Bakr anhu was the first one to submit to this message, he is called a Siddiq, which means a tester, the person who attests to the truth. So he became an embodiment after the Prophet, of course, that he would submit to the will of God. And this submission to the will of God, as you know, is not easy an affair, especially when you have people to lose, when you have something to grieve, poverty, illness, loss of a dear departed. All these things make us extremely jittery, they make us frustrated. But then it is here that lies the test. We have to submit to the will of God. If something is happening according to his will, and it might not be according to our expectations, but because God is making it happen, there is some good hidden behind it. So the philosophy of this is that submission to God is something which is not only our test, it also is something, if we realize and maybe introspect and look back, we will find that there might be a lot of instances in our lives in which we might have questioned the judgment of God, but maybe sometime later we realize that yes, it was the right thing which God had done for us, and had things happened according to our wish and our will, we would have ended up in a lot of trouble and a lot of bothers. This also is something that needs our trust in God. This submission is something that needs this trust, and this immense trust that whatever is happening for a reason. It is happening for our own well-being, and we have to understand this. And as I said, this is not an easy affair, especially when things happen in a way that you don't expect them, and they cause a lot of loss, whether in monetary terms or in other or otherwise, I would say. So the first quality which is mentioned is in al-Muslimina wal-Muslimat. And then it is said right after that, wal-Mu'minina wal-Mu'minat, which means believing men and believing women. Of course, now belief is something which is a step ahead to submission. As you know, that submission itself requires to make ourselves feel that we are submitting to the will of God. But the next words are in al-Mu'minina wal-Mu'minat, that they are the ones who not only submit to God's will, but they are ones who have faith in God. They have full trust in God. They know that this submission is going to lead them to a life of everlasting pleasure and luxury in the hereafter. And they're convinced of the fact that believing in these things which God has asked us to believe is actually something that our own fitra, our own nature actually entails. And we feel when we believe in God, when we believe in the hereafter, in the prophets of God, in scriptures, in the angels, and whatever we have been asked to believe, we feel as if this belief is strengthening ourselves from inside. And also remember that the Quran has mentioned this a lot of times, that this belief is not blind. It's not that you have to blindly accept things. All the beliefs which are mentioned in the Quran, they have a rationale behind them. They have a sound reasoning behind them, and people are required to understand that reasoning to make their belief even more stronger. It would be like a living connection with God, and of course, it would also be something which would make ourselves communicatable to other people, to the younger generation, to people who are non-believers. So, if this belief, if we know the reasoning behind our set of beliefs, we will not only be very much comfortable and assured in our own hearts, we would also be able to communicate it to the next generation and to people who might have questions regarding our faith. So, innal muslimina wal muslimat wal mu'minina wal mu'minat. And then the words are wal qanitina wal qanitat, that they are dutiful men and they are dutiful women. Of course, which means that if they have been imposed certain responsibilities, they fulfill those responsibilities. They have this frenzy, I would say, or enthusiasm or zeal in them, that if they have these duties and responsibilities before the Almighty, then they should try their utmost to follow them in letter and in spirit. So they don't argue, they are not arrogant against what God has wished us or directed us, but on the other hand, their attitude is of compliance. They are not ones who would argue and take out make objections maybe, or for the sake of point scoring, they would criticize such injunctions. No, but their real test is that they show compliance. They are dutiful. If they have been asked to do certain things, they follow that in letter and spirit. And this is absolutely something which is very difficult. For example, when you're sitting together and when you know that backbiting is something that is going to lead us to a lot of trouble in the hereafter, and it has been really very heavily proscribed and prohibited in the Quran, and we are mindful of this fact that we have to obey the Almighty, because you see, the biggest thing that needs to be controlled is our tongue. So any dutiful act begins with our attitude and begins with our power of expression. So it starts with expressing ourselves. It could be through our gestures, it could be through our attitude, and of course, when we do or say something. So, innal muslimina wal muslimat wal mu'minina wal mu'minat wal qanitina wal qanitat. And then the next words, they are even more involving, and the words are was sadiqina was sadiqat, which means truthful men and truthful women. So, or they are righteous men and righteous women. So, as far as Sadiqeen are concerned, they are ones who would always be righteous and truthful in whatever they would say. And truth is something which lies at the pinnacle of all virtues. And if we are truthful, if we are able to do justice to the truth, if we are sincere seekers of the truth, we have brought up this question a number of times, that one of the greatest tests that all of us have been put through is this sincere quest for the truth. We have to seek the truth as much as we can, and not only seek it, but speak the truth, remain straight with every person. The Quran at another instance says, "Qulu qawlan sadida." You have to speak what is correct, regardless of the consequences. So if this is something of a tall order, because at times speaking the truth is not easy at all, especially when you think that speaking the truth would perhaps make your very closed ones angry, or speaking the truth might bring some loss to you. But the Quran says that this is what has to be done, that you have to speak the truth. وَالصَّابِرِينَ وَالصَّادِقِينَ وَالصَّادِقَاتِ. And then it says وَالصَّابِرِينَ وَالصَّابِرَاتِ, which means they are steadfast, they are patient, they are absolutely, they undergo these trials in a way that they know that this is something which is going to happen, and they have to show this steadfastness, and this discipline, this self-discipline, this self-control only comes my dear viewers, when we have a strong God connection, because patience is something which just cannot be earned. I mean, it's not something that we can merely earn it. You have to work for it. So the Quran at another instance says, "Wama sabruka illa billah," which means that you cannot be patient. You cannot have that perseverance, quality of perseverance, unless you have that connection with God. Because that connection of God gives you the power, the strength to be patient. Because you know that if you are showing patience or steadfastness in the wake of calamities, it is because God is making you pass through certain trials and He's testing your mettle, and He's going to reward you as a result if you would, of course, show the right attitude. So, sabirina was sabirat. Of course, this is something in which a part of religion is actually summed up. And then the verses go on to say, wal khashi'ina wal khashi'at, which means they are humble men and women. They are not arrogant. They are not people who would be supercilious or show their pride and vanity in a way that would make them self superior to other people. No, they are down to earth. They always remember that they have been created by God, and if they have a certain quality, they then of course they do have this comprehension that this is something which God has blessed them with. It's maybe not their own earning, it's not their own doing. So they have to be people who show this gratitude to God, and they are able to understand that they have to be humble, and humble in the wake of anything that they might have, and they must always realize that the amount of the set of I would say bad habits that we have, if we keep an eye on them, if we keep an eye on our own shortcomings, this is one of the best ways to keep us humble. It checks us, our arrogance. It makes us realize that in spite of boasting some qualities, there are some things that we are not proud of, and it keeps our pride in check as well. So it says, wal khashi'ina wal khashi'at. And then the words are wal mutasaddiqina wal mutasaddiqat, which means charitable. That men and women who are charitable, who look out for others, who leap out for others, who are proactive in helping others. They would like to find out where they can help. And of course, this is such an inspirational word in itself, wal-mutasaddiqina wal-mutasaddiqat, that it is as if they are just waiting that something comes along their way. In fact, they're not waiting, they are proactively finding out if there is any venue, any area in which they could offer their help, not only through monetary means, but by any other means. It could be your skill that you could offer, it could be the time that you can offer. So there are so many things that make you charitable. So they are charitable in their outlook. وَالْمُتَصَدِّقِينَ وَالْمُتَصَدِّقَاتِ. And then the Quranic verses say, وَالصَّائِمِينَ وَالصَّائِمَاتِ, which means they are ones who fast. And here, if you analyze the context, we'll find this out, that actually what is referred to here are the optional fasts which are recommended in other months than Ramadan. Of course, Ramadan is the month in which we have to fast, but the context shows that here, particularly the fasts which are optional and which could be kept in other months are referred to. And we know Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would be one who would make it a point to fast at least 3 days. He would fast in other months, and there were special days as well in which he would fast, in order to create the spirit that fasting in itself is something which creates that closeness and that sense of obedience with the Almighty. So the words are was-sa'imina was-sa'imat. And then it says wal-hafizina furujahum wal-hafizat, which means that they are chaste, that men and women, they don't indulge in extramarital relations. They have their relations, their intimate relations with their wives only. No other relationship in religion is acceptable which is out of wedlock. The only relationship which is acceptable is the one which takes place through wedlock, because you see, the family is the building block of a society, and in order to protect that building block, it is essential that men and women remain emotionally sincere to one another, and they don't commit any unfaithfulness. And the final quality which is mentioned in this verse is وَالذَّاكِرِينَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا وَالذَّاكِرَاتِ, that they are ones, that these men and women are ones who remember the Almighty. And now remembering the Almighty, of course, means that at different occasions of our lives and on different routines that we pass through, we are always God conscious. So when we see something of benefit, when we see that some benefit is coming our way, we say Alhamdulillah. When we commit something wrong, we say Astaghfirullah, which means God forgive us. We have all those words which are appropriately instructed to us, that when we are remembering God, that remembrance is something which is like a living remembrance, and you are indulging in a routine, you are starting a routine, you're maybe just started your meal, you have ended your meal, you started to wear clothes, you've just got into the car, you just entered your house. So we have so many supplications from Prophet Muhammad, which actually make that occasion an occasion of blessing, an occasion of connecting with God, seeking His forgiveness, seeking His blessings, and expressing our gratitude. And you know what the verse says is, it's not just says that they are ones who remember God. It says وَالذَّاكِرِينَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا وَالذَّاكِرَاتِ. So they just don't remember God, they remember Him abundantly, which means at every occasion they have this consciousness that they are connected to God, and they have to maintain that connection. So it is said that for such people, أَعَدَّ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا, that for such people, the Almighty has prepared forgiveness and a great reward. And it is our dua at the end of studying this verse, that may God make us reflect these qualities as much as we can, and as much as we can, we are able to follow them, especially in this month of Ramadan. So I now end my talk here, and I'm available for your questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Another very good talk. Thank you for continuing to educate us and give us your time. Just out of curiosity, that Encyclopedia Britannica in the background, do you ever read it these days, or is it all internet-based things?
Well, this was a gift which I got from my late father about 40 years ago.
Mashallah,
this is 1979 or 19. This is a 1980 edition.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's more of an ornamental value.
I bet it looks good. It looks good. I'll start off the first question. Remember, the last question I asked you yesterday was from Mr. Asif, and he felt that we might have misconstrued his question a little bit. So he has sent the question again a little bit summarized, although I think you have already answered it yesterday, but this time I'll read it ditto. So this is what Asif Saab says. I read something which seems like a logical reason to believe in that religion I was reading about. So he read about a religion and he thought there was some logic in it. But still I believe that Islam is the truth. In my heart is Islam. So what does the glorious Quran says about this topic? Is the person doing good in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because his faith is strong, he believes in Islam without any reason? Or is he doing bad in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Yes, exactly. This is I tried to address this yesterday. When you say that you believe in Islam and that belief is strong, but then you find logic in some other religion as well. So you see, if you just dilute these statements, what needs to be understood that what exactly has made your belief strong. If that strength of belief is because of the fact that you inherited this religion from your parents or the society, and you have an emotional attachment, then faith without any intellectual comprehension of that faith, I would not say that it's a strong faith. So if you say that you have a strong faith, it would first mean that you are intellectually convinced that whatever has been asked you to believe in is something of your own discovery, and you feel that if you're believing in it, you're believing in it for a reason. And then something else comes along, let's presume, which is even more convincing. Something, it could be anything. So therefore you should, go for that thing. And this is what I actually tried to say yesterday when I said that it's like a quest of truth, a journey for the quest of the truth that keeps you engaged all your life. So in the first place, if you are believing in religion, if you are believing in Islam, that belief has to be a rationally understood belief. And if it is basically an emotionally understood belief, and you find logic in some other thing, then what you are saying is that you're emotionally attached to something that you inherited, but logically attached to something that you maybe read. So this should not be the case. In the first case, your own belief with which you started should be critically evaluated by you. You should think about it, rethink, question it, discuss about it, debate it. And of course, if you think that it is something that is the voice of your own heart and conscience, you should abide by it. And this is a journey which starts off like this. And subsequently, everything that comes along your way has to be weighed in those scales of reason and revelation. And it's like a journey in which you accept certain things and then you revise your understanding if you think your previous understanding was incorrect, or it would ratify maybe your previous understanding. So basically, it has to start off with a rational understanding. So perhaps what my dear person or whoever the person is asking is, or my reply to him would be that in the first case, your attachment to religion, to Islam, should be perhaps redone by you, and the questions that you might have regarding religion or your critical appreciation, that should make you question certain things. And if you think that those things are not convincing you and there is something else, you have all the leverage, I would say, to reject something and accept something else, because your test before the Almighty is a test for the acceptance of the truth which you think is the truth. And this is an ongoing journey. It's not going to end with a certain thing. It's going to end with our last breath, in fact.
Okay, I think that clarifies it very much. Thank you very much. So we'll go on to the flow. First question is by Fatma. Fatma, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. I have a question regarding Qaza Namaz. If I sleep through the Asr prayer time, I wake up at Maghrib. So the method to do Qaza is like I do 2 rakats of Asr and then I offer the Maghrib prayer.
Okay, you slept through your Asr time. Then you see, you have to pray the full prayer whenever you offer Qaza, or if the time has passed, you will not reduce the number of rakats, so they'll remain the same. And you have the option whether you can first do Maghrib and then pray the Qaza prayer, or you can first pray the Qaza prayer and then pray the Maghrib prayer, as long as the Maghrib prayer is again not delayed. So there are both options, but you will not reduce the number of rakats of the missed prayer. The missed prayer, you will offer the first rakat. You don't need to offer the nafils. If you do, of course, it's up to you, but the mandatory part are the first rakats that you miss, and you have to offer them in full and not half them.
Okay, and it's okay if I don't maintain the sequence, if I do Maghrib first and Asr later.
That is fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goes on to a question which was asked on our group written question. I read it ditto again. Jews are displacing Palestinians from Palestine, claiming a right to the land since it was given to them by God. In Qur'an, when Moses crosses over with his people, Allah Ta'ala ordered them to enter a town and kill everyone there. But Isa followers do not do that. Was it like that?
You see, you need to understand that when the Almighty, when Abraham was born, from Abraham we can see that the history of prophethood entered into a new era in which prophethood remained within the progeny of Abraham. So first, the progeny of Isaac. You can say that the Israelites, they were given this responsibility of delivering the truth, and for them a center of monotheism, which was Palestine, it was given in their custody. And when they actually did not fulfill this responsibility, later on the Ishmaelites, who had already been settled in the time of Abraham in the land of Arabian Peninsula to make another center of Tawheed, they were given this responsibility. So this is a historical debate in which a responsibility which was given to the Israelites, and they did not follow that responsibility, and then it was taken from them and transferred to the Ishmaelites. So this happened, and it finished at that time. So today they cannot claim that as a result of God giving them that kingdom, they have to reclaim it, or Palestine is an area which belongs to them religiously. This would not be the right thing to say. Today, the issue of Palestine, or maybe some of the other issues which relate to this question that you have asked, relate more to politics and the geopolitics of today. But my answer, because I'm not an expert in geopolitics, I cannot, answer that from that angle. But what I can say is that the claim of the great empire of King David, which is made by the Jews, was a historical thing they were given at one time. They were given the custodianship of the land of Palestine before the Arabian Peninsula, before the Ishmaelites. The Israelites were in charge, and as a result, a center was built for them in Palestine so that they could discharge that duty. But they failed miserably in that duty. So that responsibility was taken from them and given to the Ishmaelites, which then, of course, they are now trying to fulfill, and unfortunately, miserably failing as well. So this is all as far as religion is concerned, in which I can maybe make a comment. Whatever else is happening, as I said, relates more to geopolitics and the political situation and what has happened after World War II, in which Britain, of course, we know how they displaced the Jews, the Palestinians from there, and inducted Jews and made that kingdom of Israel there, because they think that the power or the promise of the Almighty regarding that, the establishment of the kingdom and the building of the temple once again is something which is promised to them. So this is basically their interpretation. So my understanding from the sources is that this was an event in history that happened, and it happened, and now it no longer applies to us. It's a historical debate that they were given that land and they did not fulfill its responsibilities. So therefore, that custodianship no longer matters now. All that now matters is, of course, whatever country or whatever geopolitics in that area is governing the divide, that is being followed as a result of a lot of forces, especially, as I said, after World War II, which made a lot of new countries appear on the map of the world.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Hopefully, this has answered the question that they intended to ask. Adil Qureshi, please fire away.
Doctor.
So
I have two very related questions. I hope I get a chance to ask them in the same breath. Regarding your last talk, there was a mention of tafakko fi din liyunzira qawmahum. So a group of people who should probably take Islamic scholarship as a career and then try to play that role that Ambiya used to play. One thing that I would like to sort of clarify is that what is the difference between this role that is highlighted here, and obviously another role which is highlighted in Surah Ahzab, where it says everybody has to do tawasi bil haq and tawasi bil sabr. If you could just highlight the difference between those, and then I'll try to ask my second question.
So there is a world of difference between the two. The Surah Asr relates to the responsibilities of a common man, these are the responsibilities which are imposed on every single person, that in their own surroundings, tawasaw bil haq and tawasaw bil sabr is a responsibility, that if they are able to say something which is the right thing or which is the truth, and people under their influence, people who they know, for example, their own family members, their associates, their companions, their people at the workplace. So this relates to their own circle of influence. And of course, each one of us has that circle of influence. But the responsibility stated in Surah Tawbah's verse 122 that you were studying yesterday, it relates to a sound understanding of religion, in which you are able to answer questions, you're able to explain religion, because you don't expect from a common man to explain religion the way scholars do. So this is much like saying that if you fall sick, you don't go to someone who has maybe perfunctory knowledge by reading some medical journal, you go to a proper doctor. So Surah Asr basically tells us of our basic responsibilities of every single Muslim. And this relates to propagation of the truth in their own circle of influence. But this verse of Surah Tawbah is a much bigger responsibility. It's the responsibility of the scholars of the Ummah. So that was the responsibility of a common man, and this is the responsibility of the scholars, that they should gain sound understanding and are able to deliver.
So the thing that this common man has to do, the nature of that thing is similar, and that common man also has to have certain tafakkur in deen then, right? Or no, the
Not at
common man does not need to study religion or
all.
to do any of this.
The word haq here doesn't refer to any religious thing. It refers to maruf or munkar, which is of course mentioned elsewhere in the Quran. Not munkar but maruf. Maruf means everything which is which is a universal truth, something which is of universal truth. That whatever we consider to be universal truth, which is regarded to be correct by everyone, there is no discrepancy in that. So these are not religious truths; they are basically universal truths. So as far as these universal truths are concerned, they would inculcate them, and of course, when the time comes that they would like to, it's or remember the other thing which is mentioned is they communicate what the truth is, which of course consists of that maruf, and at the same time, their next responsibility is that they inculcate people that they should remain steadfast on the truth that they adopt. But as I said, this truth primarily relates to the maruf or the universal truths. Although, of course, there are certain things which might come under it, like, for example, if you are praying or you're observing certain religious rituals, and you think that in your own circle of influence, you would like to propagate them amongst your friends by your own actions, by your own deeds, or maybe at times talking to them, this would also be subsumed. But primarily, as I said, this is something which relates to the capacity of knowledge that you would have. So primarily, it would relate to the universal truths, and then secondarily, it would relate to the extent of basic knowledge that you have regarding religion or the basic religious truths. For example, everyone knows that you have to read the Quran and understand the Quran, or maybe offer the prayer and observe the fast. So some of these basic truths which don't need any scholarship, where they don't need any tafakkur.
Right, right, got it. So, and sir, my second question, which is just pertinent to this, is if somebody then finally gets convinced and really is inspired to take some action, and they now decide to take this Islamic scholarship as a career and move forward with that. And you did mention Al-Mawrid is one of the very good institutes and options yesterday as well. One concern that in practice people tend to observe is that unfortunately it's not one of those careers that could help you survive your financial needs, your family needs, and other things as well. So, can one really take this up as a full-time profession? Do you really realistically see people taking it up as a full-time profession, or should they consider doing it as a part-time for their job, their
Yes,
day job, or something else? Yeah.
I was actually referring to the fact that if they are able to study it part time, and then if they are able to do a degree in religion from any reputed university, then one of the careers which generally Islamic scholars adopt is teaching. So, on the one hand, they can study religion from institutes like Al-Mawrid, but because Al-Mawrid is not a degree awarding institute, you would not get a degree that would be recognized at the state level. So at best, what you would be given is a certificate which the institute would give. So on the one hand, you will be equipped with religious knowledge. You can use that religious knowledge to acquire a religious degree, like for example, graduate studies in Islamic studies, which of course is a master's course or maybe a PhD. And that is something which would make you enter the field of academia, which of course is a place where you can earn, and it's a respectable job to be a professor. So on the one hand, you would be teaching, that would be your profession, and on the other hand, the knowledge that you have gained through such institutes, you can either mix the two. At times you have this leverage, or at times you don't have the leverage, and what you can do is that you discharge your professional responsibilities separately, and the knowledge that you have gained as a religious scholar from such institutes, of course, can be used to author books, to conduct seminars, to have discussions, to do lectures. So this can also go side by side. But as I said, the best would be if the two could be amalgamated. And there are people in our institute who have been able to amalgamate these two, and there are others who are carrying on in a way that their professional teaching is going on also in the Islamic sphere, and on other instances, for example, in their spare time, they are able to teach classes for individuals who similarly would like to aspire and become scholars of religion.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Deep. Dr. Saleem, next question I'll take from our chat as well. Now, this is a long question, so please bear with me. The person who has asked this question is keen that I give you a whole background and the long question. So here it goes. So this person want to ask about various kind of salats, the one that, namaz that we read in religious literature or see on television. So they say, for example, Salatul Tasbih. Many Muslims, myself included, would vouch for offering this salah in tahajjud and would connect it with how sooner their wishes were either granted or they felt spiritually fortified and elevated. In modern terms, it may look like having your desired destiny manifested. This is how it can explain how much this particular form of worship has been regarded. Now, last year, I found out through Ramadan question and answer that it does not have any proven base in authentic hadith literature. And I found myself lost, as this was my quickest way of remedying my connection with Allah in any type of material or spiritual crisis. For all those times that I found my wishes granted and little and big miracles that I observed and attributed to my prayers being answered. Were they mere a test? You answered a question yesterday about the law of imhal, that Allah gives more respite if people go wrong and if this wish coming true become a mere trial and test and a punishment. Could offering this salah to seek Allah's mercy be akin to one experience of law of imhal? Should one repent on having their firm belief in this particular form of salah? So that is their question. I hope you can answer that.
No, certainly not. I would not say that. I would say at the time that you were offering that prayer, you were considering it to be something of an authentic nature, and you were doing it out of, following something which to you, because of the fact that you might not have researched or whatever the society was following, or you were generally following that. So I think when it came to your notice that it was not correct or it was not authentically reported and you stopped, that was what was required of you. In the first instance, you were doing whatever came to your knowledge and whatever you thought to be the truth, even though it is not. So this is the beauty of religion, that whatever you are doing, if you are doing it out of sincerity, and it might not be actually what God has intended you to do, but you're doing it out of sincerity and you're doing it without showing any negligence. And as soon as something comes about and tells you, well, what you were doing in the past was not correct, and you change your stance and you adopt a new stance, precisely that is what God wants us to do. Because you see, we are, as seekers of the truth, we can never be sure what the truth is. This is an ongoing journey. So wherever you are, you will be judged according to your own understanding at that particular time. So when at that particular time you believe the Salatul Tasbih to be something of a truth and something which was actually ordained by the Prophet, you were behaving like that, and I'm sure God will inshallah reward you for that. But when it came to your knowledge that this was not something, and you abandoned it, and then you went for other things, then this was the test that you were put through, and you passed that test with flying colors. And this will now continue to happen. This is, I said, what exactly the real test of life is, that you continuously are put through these questions, that at times what you are doing for a number of years, it suddenly comes to your notice that this was not the Prophet that he had ever said, or maybe the Quran never said these. So this is basically what we are required to do, that what we think is correct, we should follow it at that particular time. As soon as we come to know that it is not correct, we should abandon it and then follow the new one. And at the same time, I can give you examples from the Quran which tell us that God will judge us according to our understanding of that time. If later on that understanding proved to be incorrect, He's not going to hold us accountable for that, as long as we were not negligent or indifferent. If we were sincerely understanding something to be the right course and we were adopting that course, it will reward you. It will reward that person equally. So this is certainly not what we call as imhal. That is an entirely different thing. This is what we call as your own journey to find the truth.
Thank you. I think that clarifies it. Shiraz, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Suhail bhai. Assalamu alaikum, Shehzad bhai. Shehzad bhai, I have two questions, right? And I don't see any other hand, so I will take the liberty of asking both if Suhail bhai permits, right? So one question is very simple. in Quran, it's about parents, right? So Quran said that we have to treat them with the best possible, in a best possible way. Ihsan ka word is there, right? Now in Mizan, in your English translation, as well as in every tafsir that we ever pick up, another word is used in tafsirs, in explanations of these verses, is that we have to stay obedient to our parent. Now, I absolutely, I'm sold on that. But there is no explicit word in the verses of Quran where regarding parents, where the word obedience is used, right? So how we infer from treating our parents very well, ihsan ki ravish, we can't even say oof in front of them. You know everything, right? That's written in the Quran. How we drive obedience from that is something I would like you to comment on. And if time permits, then I will ask my second question.
So I think this is a very important question, and you'll find that there is not a single place in the Quran where obedience to parents has been mentioned. There is not a single verse, and I say this with full responsibility. So there are 4 or 5 places in which the rights of the parents are mentioned, and not one of them says that you have to obey your parents. At every place you will find the words are something to the effect "wabil walidaini ihsana," which means that you treat them with kindness, with compassion. So the misunderstanding has arisen from precisely the verse that you just quoted, which says "Fala takullahuma uffim wala tanharhuma." So in Surah Bani Israel, the words used are that don't say uff to them and "Fala tanharhuma," and don't scold them. So in Urdu, the word uff actually means to disobey someone. If you say uff, it would be tantamount to saying that, well, you are not liking that person's orders and you are not submitting to him or her, whatever the case might be. But unfortunately, this is again a case of mixing up the Urdu meaning of an Arabic word with the Arabic meaning. In Arabic, the word uff actually means to be disrespectful, and you'll find this usage in the Quran elsewhere as well. The word uff has been used at other instances, and you can also look up a dictionary. You'll find it doesn't have the same meaning as one it has in the Urdu language, which means a lack of obedience. In Urdu language, it does mean lack. So what has happened is that at times this Urdu impact on Arabic words has taken its toll, and people have translated the word uff in a way that we feel that, well, we are not even required to say uff before our parents, which would mean that we have to obey them at all cost. Whereas, as I said, the word uff means فَلَا تَقُلْ uffin وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا. Taken together, this verse would mean that don't show disrespect to them and do not scold them. So the word uff has been erroneously translated. This is one reason. The other reason is a hadith which says uquq al-walidain. Uquq in Arabic, which is ayn, qaf, waw, and qaf. Uquq means disobedience. Now this verse has been, or this hadith, is quoted generally whenever you read those portions of tafsir in which the rights of the parents are mentioned, and uquq al-walidain is mentioned. Now, if you study this verse in the light of the Quran, you'll find that this also is referring to their rights, not to their disobedience. So when you are disrespectful in their rights, the rights that which God has imposed on you to fulfill regarding them, so that is what is called uquq. So not fulfilling their rights. So these are the reasons, in my understanding, that have caused this misconception. Otherwise, you yourself are a very well-read student of the Quran. You can see there is not a single instance in the Quran in which you'll find obedience being mentioned with the word parents.
Shilbhai, am I allowed to ask one more question?
Yeah, sure. Far away. Is that okay, Dr. Saleem? Yeah, far away.
Okay.
That's fine.
Thank you. Actually, I just have this question in mind and run time. Earlier on, somebody asked a question regarding, Bani Israel was told to attack Palestine. And my question is this, that as per my limited understanding of Quran, just like Quran shows that, just like God has the tendency to pick some people out of the mankind, we call them prophets or rasuls, he also pick places at times, right, which he wants to set up as center of Tawheed, just like Khana Kaaba. Prophet Muhammad could have easily set up another city or another building as a center of Tawheed, but the endeavor was so tough to take Makkah back, right, because that's what Allah said. as the center of Tawheed. Bani Israel was told that when they were taken out of, slavery from Egypt, that God is going to set you up in Palestine with always the clause that we can even put in bracket as long as they stay obedient to God. They didn't listen to Moses. They were in desert for 40 years, and the Palestine was conquered after Moses' death. So just like at the time of Abraham, peace be upon him, may Allah be pleased with him, God chose Makkah. Palestine was chosen as a place. So this is, can we put this commandment under the same category, where under the direct guidance of a prophet, it's a direct commandment, right, to pick a place as a center of Tawheed. It has nothing to do with you and me, normal people. This rule has nothing to do with that.
You're absolutely correct. You see, there were two branches of Abraham's progeny. One were the Israelites and the other were the Ishmaelites. So for the Israelites, the center of Tawheed was Palestine. And that is called the Ardul Muqaddasa in the Quran. And for the Ishmaelites, it was the Arabian Peninsula. So both these were promised lands. And there is only this historical sequence that we need to know, that first this responsibility was given to the Palestinian people, or the people of Israelites, to go there and set up this center. But when, of course, they were not able to discharge it, or they miserably failed, that responsibility was taken from them. And then the second center of Tawheed, which was already built by Ishmael since the times of Abraham, but it had got contaminated with this creed of polytheism. Then when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ finally arrived on the scene, that responsibility was transferred into him. So now, as far as the center of Tawheed is concerned, Palestine has no such significance. This significance, it does have that significance, but now this significance, the way it has been transferred to Prophet Muhammad's followers, is what is now needed to be understood. So these two centers, had the Israelites properly understood that what the responsibility was, they would have merged them. They would have actually accepted faith, and they would have become one. But because of the fact that they denied the last prophet, and this responsibility was taken from them and given to the Ishmaelites as a new center of Tawheed, so this is something which still persists. And what happened with Palestine was a historical happening, I would say, or an event, and it took place in history. And therefore, the claim of the Jews, which even now they vociferously present, that they have a religious entitlement to that land, does not hold water in the light of the Quran, according to my understanding.
Thank you, Shehzad. Thank you, Suhail bhai.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We have got one question from the moral lessons, and that's it. Are you happy to take it, or shall we move it to tomorrow?
Okay, I'll take it.
Okay, that's good. So this is from Tuba, and this question has several parts. So I think I'll just stick to a couple of parts, and then maybe we'll take one part tomorrow. So the first part is, why is the punishment for Jahannam so severe if Allah is Rahman as compared to the sins that we commit? So why is the punishment for Jahannam not in proportion to the sins that we commit if Allah is so Rahman?
I think we have to realize this when we analogously think regarding punishments that we give to criminals that are guilty of heinous crimes. So as far as these heinous crimes are concerned, of course, there are areas in which, for example, they are like the extreme punishment of stoning to death for rapists, for example, is not an easy death at all. I can assure you. It is something which is going to be. This is something which we shudder even thinking that someone is going to be stoned to death. So you see, as far as punishing people is concerned, regarding the extent of crimes that they commit, is something which God has given His verdict as far as this world is concerned. And therefore, it does make sense that a person has to be punished and he has to be taken to task for the crimes that he commits. And some of them are so grave that, as I said, another punishment that comes to my mind is which says that you have to cut the limbs of the criminal from opposite sides and leave him to die a very, very dire death. This again is one of the punishments which of hiraba or fasad fil ard, which is mentioned in Surah Maida. So this makes us realize that there are certain heinous crimes which actually call for heinous punishments. If this is understood, then we can see that on the plane of God, similarly, there are certain crimes which entail equal amount of punishment. So the only thing is that the extent of that punishment might be different in the scale of God, but because the basis is the same, I mean, we would also vouch for the fact that there has to be a certain amount of punishments. But what exactly is the punishment? For example, a person who is doing something wrong, for example, a person who has killed someone, the Quran says that for him there is eternal hell. If you end up deliberately killing someone, then the punishment for that crime, of course, it has a punishment in this world as well, and it has a punishment in the next world as well. So the extent of punishments which are mentioned in the Quran regarding the hereafter are also commensurate with the nature of that crime. The only thing is that the extent of that crime or the nature of that extent is something which God has fixed, because it is He who decides that that extent is something which really is the amendment or the atonement for that crime. So there are certain things that we on our own discretion do for criminals in this world, and it makes us absolutely satisfied. And there is another thing which we can understand as a result, that the creator of the heavens and the earth, He also thinks that there are certain heinous crimes that merit a punishment which is commensurate to that crime.
Fantastic, thank you. So her second point is, I'll keep it brief. Tuba asks, isn't the advice to women to observe patience with their abusive husbands, their toxic preaching and wrong practice of their husbands, brackets, when evil can be reciprocated with equal evil? So she's asking, is this correct advice for women to observe patience with their husbands when their husbands are abusive, they're toxic, they're preaching wrong things? And why do the women have to put up with their husbands in this case?
This is not what the Quran actually prescribes in such cases. This is something which is entirely the discretion of the wife. If she thinks that she's putting up with an abusive husband, there's no. I mean, she's not at all. It's not at all mandatory upon her to follow being a wife in these circumstances. Precisely for this reason, breaking up a marriage is an option which is given to her. So this is her choice. If she thinks that maybe it would have an adverse effect on the children, or there could be several other reasons, then she's just pulling along as a result. It is fine, but she should be absolutely clear that as far as her rights are concerned, if she wants to come out of this abusive relationship, she is fully justified. She is fully justified, and at times it might be even recommended that she does so and start afresh.
Fantastic. I think that sums up our session for the day. We have got a very long question from Mr. Asif, which we'll hopefully discuss tomorrow. Thank you very much, participants. Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Inshallah, see you tomorrow.
Inshallah.